Hi guys, 2-for-1 surfboard review again at Go Surf today. So this is the Superbrand Fling. Superbrand have been around for quite a while now, and I'm really impressed with them. Hey, I think they're a really good brand. They're probably a little bit less known than some of the big shapers, but the product's really good, the designs are really good, and I think they've really established a reputation for having some like pretty awesome go-to boards in their stocks. You've got the Fling, which is basically the sort of small wave, gravelly, summer fun speed machine. And then you've got, I think a lot of people have had the Toy, which is kind of a all-round short board. And then there's some others in there. There's like a twin fin, there's a Siamese twin, there's a Taser, and then a lot of people have got the Pig Dog. So a lot of people would be like Fling for the grovels, Toy for the day-to-day daily driver short board, and then the Pig Dog's like the step-up barrel board. So I think they've got a really good range of solid models with a few others filling in between, and they've released some more interesting models this year as well, which is pretty cool. So if we go over the Fling, basically something old and something new. So I've got this is a Superflex Fling that I got second hand, and that's in the big square tail. And then this is the Superfling Swallow, which is basically an update on the old square tail one. And they've just taken a little bit of width out of the nose and a little bit of width out of the tail and refined some of the thickness distribution. Both great boards. I'd say the Fling and the Superflex with the old school with the square tail is probably a tiny bit more grovelly, and this one's probably a tiny bit more whippy and performance orientated, but there's not much in it. They're both pretty similar, and then obviously poly versus epoxy, they're going to have two different feels anyway. So probably worth mentioning, these boards actually have been made in 2 or 3 iterations now. So the older ones, which is this, and this was probably one of the older productions. These were made with quite high volume, so both these boards 6.0 22 wide, and they're both 44.5 litres, possibly 45, so they're quite high, like the high in my volume range. And then more recently they relaunched them with reduced volume. So these two, again, you can get, if you got the same 6.0 now, you'd be looking at like 38.5 litres. So that's you know, they've dropped 5, 6, 7 litres out of the same board. So the cool thing about that is wherever you're at and what your surfing's like, there's probably something for you in the volume range. If you're older and chunkier like me, and you know, just put even more weight on recently, which is not great, but you know, you can have something like this as an option. And if you're a bit fitter and you know everything else, you can get a low volume option, and you could get a custom from Superbrand as well. So you could pretty much take the similar outline and get the thickness that suits you, which is really cool. So yeah, if we go through so again, the summer board, kind of grovelly. What I really like on this board is Superbrand for this model in this volume. They've not been scared to chuck volume in it, and they've not been scared to have a flat rocker. So one of the things I really like about this, you can see like the rockers are nice and flat. The outline shape's nice and wide. You've got a nice big nose. You've got a nice wide tail, but it's not crazy. You've got quite a boxy rail, which is good if you're in the real summer slops. On this swallowtail one, they've probably just refined the tail thickness a little bit, and they've taken the overall template in a little bit compared to the Superflex. Now, this is PU poly. It's really well finished. These ones are made in Australia. I believe all of the polys are now made in, I believe all of the polys have always been made in Australia. I think they make them in the States as well. So they're a high, you know, I really like these. I've been impressed with this. It's a quality finish. It's definitely different to some of the Thailand boards, and they're better quality, and they are actually very close to being the same price. So if you're thinking of something from, like, I hate to put them down, but if you're thinking of something from someone like Global Surf and you see something in the Superbrand that's nearly the same price, I hate to say you're probably going to get a lot better made board, but sorry GSI. Although for about a year they were making the Flings the Superflex, so this technology of Fling, was actually made in Thailand by GSI. So hopefully they're probably quite good, because they're probably, you know, Super have probably told them exactly how they want them made. But personally, given a choice, I would be looking out for this little round Shapers Collective logo that both these boards have had. So you know they're an Aussie made board, but I wouldn't be too worried. Like if you get the Superflex and the GSI, yeah, they're pretty good. But I've been told that Superbrand are now not making in Thailand at all, so everything is coming out of Australia again, which I think is kind of cool, because, you know, to make these really cool shapes, make them in your own country, and make them at a reasonable price, I reckon that's awesome. Anyone that's doing that, hats off to them, I say. So yeah, and I've been really impressed with the product. These are very responsive boards. Like, these are a lot more, I'd say, you know, this one certainly would be more, probably a bit easier to turn than like my puddle fish, but maybe not quite the same, more pivotal, but not quite the same down the line speed. But you know, they're made to perform, to be honest. They're fairly, you know, it's a fairly high performance board for a fat board. So yeah, so that's PU poly. You've got the tail strengtheners in it. It's really nicely made. It's a good weight. It's not too light, not too heavy. Both of the boards, I'll just show you one of them after, but both of them are basically your single double V. They just do normal single double V. So yeah, 5 fins. I went FCS2 on this one, and this one, yeah, I've had a bit of fun with these, because this one I've had both of them out, and it was funny because I've had them out in a few days consecutive, but the waves changed quite significantly, so I've kind of second guessed myself way too much with some of the fins and stuff. So I'll show you the fins in a bit. I've had like the controllers in these, I've had a normal quad set in these, I've had a fairly normal tri set in these, and they all work, but they're all so in the smaller waves they all felt really good and all responsive, and then we got like the second day would be, the waves were twice as peaky as the first day, so then it sort of felt like it was skidding around, but then the next day it wasn't as peaky again, so I could have left what I had in. So it's like, yeah, so I've had a few waves on both of these boards, and they're great fun. They both go fast, they're both really manoeuvrable. With this one, I'd say you could probably get away with riding with your slightly bigger but standard-ish thrusted set, standard-ish quad set, the controllers. You could probably ride it with an MR2+1. You could probably even stick some keels in there if you wanted to, although it's not ideal for it, but you could do. And then the weird thing is the Superflex one, and a lot of people said this, and I'm surprised as well in this one, because this is one of the wider ones, that actually really worked. First day I had it, had thrusters in it, and it works really well as a thruster, which is weird because the tail's huge. And then obviously you say again, you can go to your split keels. So construction wise, this is EPS epoxy, and it's got this kind of, you know, this 3D webbing, a little bit like some of the global surf boards do, but obviously it's very, you know, the Aussie ones they're all pretty well made, but the Aussie ones are very well made. This one's a bit older. You can see the rock is pretty much the same, but this, you know, this is nice and chunky as well. So with it being epoxy and 45 litres, it's a pretty, you know, you can take that down to quite a small wave, but obviously that sort of limits you to the size of wave you can serve. And I think on these, the width and the outline shape are actually pretty good. I think a lot of the limitations of the wave range for me personally would be with them being at the high end of my volume range. So if both of these were down at 42 litres, I'm pretty sure I could surf them up into some decent sized waves, especially when you put like the grovelly fins in them. So I think I'll come round and show you the rocker. Yeah, the Concave's probably just on one, so I might as well stick to the Superflex. So just move this out of the way. Stay. So again, Superflex. This one's a 5 fin. This one's in futures. And it's a bit like the same era as the puddle jumper, and that they sort of, you know, they started bringing this single double V concave into a grovelly board, and they found they responded quite well. Yeah, so again, EPS epoxy foam, EPS foam, epoxy resin, and then you've got this carbon matrix weave that really tightens it up, and it's got that, you know, it's got quite a nice poppiness to it. it's light, but it's not too light, so it's along the lines of you know, a carbon wrap or something. I think quite a heavier guy than me had this one, but you can probably see it's got nothing major. It's got pressures in the deck, but I mean that's not really a big deal, to be honest. But other than that, it seems pretty durable. I think it's been, you know, I think this one's been around a while. It's obviously survived pretty well. So yeah, let's do concaves. So it's not too crazy, but hopefully I got these angles right. So you say you got single, you get your single in there. There's a nice single running down the board, and then you'll see it start to double there and V. And funny enough, it's a bit like we've been having this discussion with especially some of the Aussie shapes in the performance boards, where the rail is always still further in the water than the peak of the V in the double, if that makes sense. And it seems to be away with some of the performance and Aussie ones, whereas some of the other boards would have, you know, you get here and the rail would be coming away to give you more rail rocker, and the V would be sat further into the water to just make it rock. But you know, this is a single double, so basically, and it starts to V a bit just off the tail, so you get a little bit of rock just off the tail. But basically, the single gives you speed under your front foot, and I think they're right. The double gives you a bit more grip when you're the double gives you a bit more grip, especially when you've got a high volume board. It's kind of like cupping the rail into more blade. So yeah, good board. So you can see, nice, and I'll leave it on there, nice flat rocker, don't fall over and embarrass me. So a nice flat rocker, I like that. They're not scared to do a flat rocker. So fins, the strange thing is that one works really well as a thruster, which is kind of bizarre, but it came with these big fiberglass Pancho Sullivan thrusters in, which are a really big thruster, and I felt amazing. Like first couple of turns I did, I was like, shit, this thing's really responsive. And then the next time I went out on it, it just felt wobbly and as if someone had taken a fin out, but the waves were just way more peaky, but they still weren't big waves. But again, you know, 45 litres in an epoxy is quite high volume. And then swapped over to these good old split keels. And then in the FCS system too, you've got the split keels again. So if you stick these split keels in, they're quite a grippy fin. So if you're anything my weight or under, they're going to hold really well. I'd say they'll hold someone up to 100 kgs probably. I mean, I'm getting on for 88 now, which is crazy. But yeah, they hold you really well. And I would probably say the swallowtail fling, possibly slightly more responsive. I quite like polys myself anyway, because we get quite choppy conditions sometimes. And the poly one with the swallowtail, potentially a little bit more forgiving as to which fins you put in it. I seem quite happy with most of the fins I put in. So you could ride it with a normal set of thruster fins or a normal set of quads, normal-ish size, and it's not skidding around like crazy. It's quite responsive. And then if you put the bigger fins in, it feels like grippier and drivier and faster. So I'll just pop back one more time and show you the difference in the two outlines, just so you can get a comparison. So if I can get a stack going on without bumping anything. You can see the two outlines together, so give you a bit of a hand when you're choosing. So you can see the swallow fling's just pulled in a couple of spots whereas this one isn't, but they're kind of much of a muchness. I'd say the swallow fling's more responsive, and this one's a little bit more grovelly, and that's, you know, half of that might just be down to the poly versus epoxy. But cracking boards. I've actually got the one of the new boards. It's called the Serial Keeler on the way, which is basically a widened out version of, it's probably a similar template, but a widened version of this. It's a dedicated twin fin. And then there's another new board called the Hippie Fling, which, if you like the front end of this and you're a slightly better surfer and you want a bit more performance in the back, it's basically this with a narrowed out tail with a hip in it. So you've almost got this kind of board on the front with more of a big version of a semi-performance shortboard square tail on the back, if that makes sense. So not unlike the average Joe in looks, but it would be a lot, I'd say it'd perform probably significantly better than the average Joe, because it's pulled in a lot more. So yeah, again, Superbrand, if you've not looked at them, they're very much worth a look. I've been stoked with them so far. They're well made, they're well priced, they're available. There's lots of different varieties of volumes and stuff, so it's probably quite a long review, but yep, hope you like that one, and we'll catch you guys soon. Yep.